So Enola Holmes, apparently Enola backwards is alone. So she's
Ooh.
Holmes alone. And
Ooh.
Holmes alone.
That's
It's a
the new
movie.
title.
It's a movie starring Millie Bobby Brown as the youngest Holmes sibling. She's been raised by her mother, Helena Bonham Carter, for 16 years of her life, who mysteriously disappears. And now the Holmes boys have returned to help raise her, and she doesn't like the direction Mycroft is taking it, so she runs away, meets a young Marquis, and together they go on adventures through London, where she goes to seek her mother.
If you want to have adventures with us in the future, give us a like, give us a subscribe, come along for the journey. So a great cast. Like, I enjoyed all of the people they put into. I got some thoughts on Henry Cavill. Here's my, like, honestly, my biggest complaint about the movie, which I enjoyed. I thought it was like a little lighthearted romp and it was fun. But Henry Cavill, everybody the whole time is like, "You're such a weirdo, Sherlock Holmes." And I'm like, is he though? He's only in it for like maybe 15 minutes or something. And he never does anything weird or idiosyncratic. He's just gorgeous and athletic and talented and intelligent. I'm like, he's human perfection. You cast Henry Cavill and you're going to talk about him being like some weirdo, but you need to make him do some weird things. Otherwise, I'm just going to be like swooning over here. You know, I didn't follow that part.
I think it's a movie that most people will say they like, and most people will say is good, but then they will never watch it again, and they will never remember anything that happened, because
also true.
The performances are great. It's shot great. It's edited very well. I think the script, like the dialogue, is pretty solid.
Yeah.
But the plot is awful, and it's not a mystery. It's not a family dynamic between her and her brothers. The movie doesn't really know what it wants to do. You had told me they mashed two books together. Yeah, it's exactly what it feels like.
Which leads me on to the second thing you need to know.
Let me talk about what I did love. Millie Bobby Brown is a star. You know, I love her as 11, but I've never seen her as anything else. And while being 11, I think, takes a lot of like range as a little actress to do, this is a different role. It's funner, it's more charismatic, and she holds it down wonderfully, which I guess, you know, it's about her. So she should be the best thing in it. And she definitely is.
I must become something unexpected.
There's nothing Sherlock Holmesy about this. And what I mean is, like, there is no real detective work. She gets these ciphers from her mom. Those like barely come into play. They're just like shown in flashes as like, oh yeah, she used that thing we showed you once to solve it. Like, there's no diving in deep into the mystery.
I can tell you what it is a mystery of. Where is this plot going? Like, that was the mystery of the movie. Is like, where is this thing going? And that said, as somebody who is like, I enjoyed it. It was, you know, it was a fun, lighthearted little movie. But at the end, you're like, finally, you're like, oh, it's about, you know, the changing politics of Britain and accidentally falling for a young lord who conveniently you save so that he can change the vote. It gets super convoluted.
There are two paths you can take, Enola. Yours, or the path others choose for you.
Yeah, the biggest problem for me is just at the end, kind of the climax of the movie, it's not really solved with any Holmes deductive reasoning, you know, or her really, you know, getting one over using intellect. She literally like jujitsus her way out of I was like, okay, I don't know.
The
like,
worst setup payoff of all time.
Yeah, it was, and they did actually set up this whole like, oh, she can never do this one jujitsu move.
They set it up in so much as they mentioned it once.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with anything. It has nothing to do with her journey. She doesn't like learn something along the way that helps her do it.
She literally just does it 3 times over the course of the movie and gets better at doing this jujitsu movie. And I was like, oh.
Third time's a charm. That's her journey.
Okay, that's it. Like that's the journey of this character.
Come on. Unlike most well-bred ladies.
I think the best part of the movie showing her kind of character arc and struggle, because there's not much of one, is when she's in the alley fighting Burn Gorman, the villain, who's, you know, trying to kill her.
Game of Thrones, and like that guy's so awesome.
Well, so often they're showing like her flashback and do great things. But in this scene, she's flashbacking and like fighting with her mom. And in her flashback, she's doing great. But
Yeah.
then when she goes to do it in real life, she's fighting a grown man who's probably been killing people his whole life. So
Right.
that little flip trick she does, she just gets slammed onto the ground instead. And that like homeschool meets reality,
Right.
that needed to happen a whole lot more in this movie. It should have been kind of the whole crux of her character arc. Like, she's got it together and she's got all the things it takes. It's just she's got to figure out how to work in the world and refine it and make it work for her.
You've progressed nicely.
The movie never got to the point where it confronted her in any of her weaknesses. I mean, she just doesn't have any.
Except for that one jujitsu move. She just couldn't.
Yeah, but that's dumb. That's not a character flaw. It has nothing to do with her. Like, Sherlock Holmes is constantly caught up by, like, he's too egotistical. He's too arrogant. Yes, he's a genius and can do it all, but there's always a problem. She's basically a homeschooled weirdo and she doesn't know anything about the world. That's one scene when she shows up in London and goes, oh, London people are weird. That's it.
We were always together. And it was wonderful.
They should have absolutely done more with like the fish out of water element of like, oh, she can deduct all this stuff, but she doesn't really know how to interact with people and she doesn't really know what to do, social, niceties and all that stuff. There could have been some interesting stuff with that. I mean, they very much made it into this character plus, that's like, yeah, she's a rebel and that's good. And it could have been interesting of like, well, but sometimes you have to play the game to be able to get what you need and to, to do your sleuthing.
Acceptable for society.
She seems intelligent.
So the movie starts missing its own beats. Like, she goes back to finishing school, which, by the way, should have been the beginning of the movie.
Sure,
the fact that she's in finishing school. But she ends up, like, splashing soup in some girls' faces, and it's supposed to read like, she's strong and independent, and those girls are mean girls and whatever. And I just read it like, what an asshole. They weren't being excessively mean, but she was. And it's supposed to read like we like her, and I'm like, I don't like her right now.
That specific scene, what I really wished in that moment, what I wished they had done is that like she like gives them a little wink or something that's like, yeah, I'm being naughty for the headmistress and we're in this together. Like,
that would have been fun.
That's what I wanted out of that moment. And I agree with you that like splashing the soup on them was like, oh, come on, you could have actually taken over that moment. You could have like really owned that moment with those girls and brought them to your side and maybe created a little rebellion of your own.
Perhaps she wants to change the world.
Perhaps it's a world that needs changing.
I think they probably tried to stay too true to the novels. They were just like, oh, we'll just take these two plot lines, kind of combine them together, and we'll make them tie up at the end. And it feels a little underwhelming. I think you're right. Like, if they had concentrated more on her kind of journey of independence, that clearly is what they want to do. They want to do kind of women's suffrage thing and her being this young lady who doesn't want to be a lady. She wants to be whatever she wants.
You don't know how to embroider.
I cannot stress enough how fun it is watching her and the whole cast. Like, imagine my disappointment when she ran away from the two Holmes brothers, because you were saying, what's his name who played Mycroft?
Sam Claflin. He's from Hunger Games and everything. Fantastic. He was so good. He actually was a real standout in this because he's such a prick. Like, he's just like this, like he's like this Mycroft Holmes. Like, he's usually kind of like, oh, the stuffy Holmes brother, but this one he's like not just stuffy. He's a jerk.
My God.
A wild woman brought up a wild child.
He was fantastic, and him and Henry Cavill and Millie all together, I thought like, oh, this is going to be the story. They're going to work together and find the mom, and they have great oh, she's leaving.
We're out.
She's going on. Okay, she's met this kid. By the way, I love the kid who played the, I'm going to call him the fortunate son. Call him Little Credence. We'll call him Credence.
Yeah, Little Lord,
Yeah, but he was great.
He was,
and they had great chemistry. And what I loved about it is he was a likable character. He brought something to the table, and they were a great complement to each other. Right. And I thought that's one of the few things they did like really well is the relationship between the two of them.
I'm Viscount Tewkesbury.
A useless boy.
But then, she runs away from him, and then they break that up. So it's like, we're not with the brothers doing a family thing. We're not with the kid doing an adventure thing. It's like three different things put together. and they don't settle down into any of the mystery of any of it, and it just kind of flies by and gets boring.
And then it kind of solves itself at the end. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I guess everything's connected. That's nice. That's nice that I don't have to solve multiple mysteries and just one mystery of like, how can my sort of boyfriend solve the mystery of where my mom is because he's going to make things easier so my mom doesn't have to blow up Parliament.
She was my whole world.
Mom's
Let's
probably
talk
a
about
terrorist
Helena Bonham Carter here, Chris. Let's
who
talk
is
about
bitterly in this movie.
how did you? Yeah, she was excellent, by the way.
Sure.
But
The few
like,
scenes we had. Yeah.
what do you actually think of her? Because I don't have a
And
high opinion of Mrs. Holmes.
You know what? There's a version of this movie that's a lot darker. That's like it's almost like V for Vendetta, and mom is raising a future terrorist or something. Like you're literally this is like Hannah or something, where it's like, oh, I'm raising a little assassin who's gonna go out and do my political bidding.
Yeah,
it was
odd.
you know.
I was taught to watch and listen. I was taught to fight. I'm coming to find you, Mother.
I don't even want to say like, hey, you know what? Women couldn't vote then, and women couldn't be in any kind of position of power, and like sometimes you got to do some stuff to like, you know, assert your thing. But they didn't really do that. They just kind of left us with this like little bit of info. They're like, mom's building bombs in London, and she abandoned her 16-year-old kid, and that's it. Hey.
Yeah, and let's have a whole motherhood hug at the end. And I'm like, yo,
right. But also leaving
you
again.
lady.
Yeah.
Fuck you. You're awful. How could you abandon your daughter to be a
like,
fucking terrorist? Like, what a terrible person.
Helena Bonham Carter is so good. It was disappointing that she wasn't in it more. They did those few flashbacks, which are nice, but we don't get a full sense of what their relationship is. We only see them kind of training and learning together, and they seem to have fun and have this good relationship. We don't get really those kind of mother-daughter moments of, you know, what was their bond like, what was their, you know, it's all kind of through Millie Bobby Brown later of like, we had these secret messages and we had these stuff. I'm like, well, I want to see you guys more.
Yeah, a lot of storytelling. Like, this is like an anime where they get to the point of no return, and then they're like, cool, let's just do a whole flashback episode and explain everything that's about to happen.
Now, where to begin?
You nailed it.
Okay.
The movie solves itself.
Yeah, it just kind of, it's just kind of like, no, everything's already happened. You just don't know it until they tell you what flashback explains why she knows how to do this or how, you know. But again, still kind of breezy fun. It's like a better Rise of Skywalker that like it's just plot piece. They were just like jumping from event to event so fast. And in this case, you know, it's not massively frustrating and disappointing because I don't care as much about it.
Yeah.
It worked because I don't care.
The game is afoot.
Yeah, so obviously I have a bunch of criticisms of this movie, but like, yeah, the cast is great. I do want to see a sequel. Like, I would like to see them get this right.
I enjoyed it, and I have a feeling I already looked. I think Metacritic gave it like around 60%. So most critics agreed, like 3 out of 5. And, you know, but on Rotten Tomatoes is like, you know, 90% positive, you know, so just everybody kind of likes it. They don't love it. I'll be really intrigued to see if, you know, if Netflix announces that they're going to do a sequel. Cause like I said, they've got all these actors locked away in cages or something. I'm not sure what they do with their actors when they're not in TV shows, but like clearly they're like, go be in a movie. Like, we need to use you. We got you on contract or something. Old Hollywood. I could definitely see this getting a sequel just because, you know, I mean, there's not a lot coming out right now, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to end up watching this just because, hey, it's the big Netflix movie that's out this month. And maybe it's not great, but it is good enough. I think it's going to be kind of good enough for a lot of people to enjoy.
And if you want to solve more mysteries with us, got to ask you, please like and subscribe, check the bell so you can get more of us later.